Welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, a teacher here at the Demon, and joining me today is Autumn Lockett, the founder and CEO at GradMissions. Autumn, I know we've seen an article recently in the National Jurist, and then you've worked with some Demon students as well on admissions, and so I'm excited to have you on to talk a little bit more about the application cycle, application games that our students are going to be playing. As applications are opening, we're recording this on September 3rd, so
That's
either
right.
open or opening in the next week or so.
Yes, there's no rest on Labor Day when you work in law school admissions. It was, can you believe this new question from U Miami Law? And I'm like, ooh, tell me more. Let's go.
I believe that. I would imagine that you probably work with a lot of type A people, and Labor Day was not a time of rest for
I was
anybody.
laboring on Labor Day,
Yeah.
Josh. Let me just tell you. Yeah, that's
I'm
the way to
sure.
do it, right? I mean, when they're reaching out to me on September 1, it's because they've done what I told them to do. They have their stuff locked and loaded, ready to drag and drop in
Mhm.
finalized PDF form on the day the apps open, and that is my ideal.
Great. Well, I'm excited to talk about that because I think that's our suggestions and advice as well line up quite well right there. I wanted to start though with a little bit of your background. When I was just glancing over your website, it says that you are a former dean of admissions for law school. Would you want to talk a little bit about your background and experience in working at an actual law school?
Yeah, an actual law school, brick and
And
mortar. So, in my past life, before I got into higher ed, I was a teacher. I was an
okay.
educator, worked with English language learners primarily, and found myself as an admissions counselor at a law school, and was admissions counselor for about 6 months. Director of admissions went on maternity leave. I was interim, and just like slowly kind of worked my way up.
Hmm.
And it was a really adventurous time to be in law school admissions because it was right after kind of the bubble had burst. And so every LSAC email that we got was like gloom and doom because like LSAT takers have cut in half. And, it was right after that kind of 08, 09 bubble had
Sure.
burst. And so we were all scrambling, trying to fill our classes where the faculty on the third floor were like, what? It was like at the law school I worked at, it was like the gods on Mount Olympus, right? So like they're on the third floor, we're all on downstairs in the second floor, and they're looking down like, where are our students? I'm like, I don't know where they went. They all got jobs in tech. So it was an adventure, and we had to just get really creative with
Hmm.
how we were going to recruit and admit students. And I happened to be working for a dean of the law school who was kind of heir apparent to be the next university president.
Okay.
And he was just open to whatever crazy idea I brought him. And so I'd say, what if we did a party where we like revealed their section to them in your backyard and there's a taco truck and live music? And he was like, let's go. And so it was just so fun. And what I really loved about working in law school admissions was the energy of the students, right?
Hmm.
Like you're a 1L. You don't just like
Yep.
happen to take the LSAT and go to law school. You go to law school because you want to do something really powerful. And there's such an energy that you get from those students. What I didn't like about working in law school admissions was how much you can't talk about with applicants. And at the end of the day, when I work for schools, I have to do what's best for schools because
Hmm.
that's paying my bills. But at GradMissions, I am able to do what's best for applicants. And so I think that's been the real shift.
That I think that's a really noteworthy point that I actually was excited to ask you about. A lot of times we'll have students who will email in and they'll say, "Oh, well, this dean just put this advice that's contrary to your advice."
Hmm.
Right? Why? Like, you must obviously be wrong if it's the dean. The dean is representing school's interests.
100% every time.
Yeah.
And
So
oh, that's what they should
right,
do.
that's what they should be doing. Right, but what we say deans are salespeople at the end of the day, right? And they are trying to
Really
sell
good
really
salespeople.
good salespeople who are selling a product
Mhm.
to you, and that is now the nature of that relationship changes based on how many applicants you have. If
That's
you're
right.
really struggling for applicants, right, you might be doing taco trucks in the back. If you
Uh-huh.
have just an abundance of candidates, that might change the way that deans approach. So let me ask you, how should students evaluate when they see dean information that comes from the dean of a law school on
Mhm.
TikTok, in a social media post, on an article? Obviously they don't want to just completely ignore that advice,
Right.
but it sounds like you should take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah. Trust but verify. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be smart. It's sort of the way you approach the LSAT, right?
Hmm.
I mean, you have to think through, you have to think is this actually in my best interest? Who does this information serve? Is this what's best for the dean? Is this what's best for the institution? Does this feel right to me? Like, you are an autonomous human who's been smart enough to get yourself through undergrad or almost through undergrad. You've been able to take the LSAT. You're smart and you can trust your gut on this. I think listening to people who aren't paid to be at that law school is a really important thing to consider.
When you look at information that they request, now there's a variety of optional statements, interviews, etc. How do you weigh the benefits of offering information with the perhaps disadvantage of revealing something that might work against you?
Oh, it's such a good question. So, at GradMissions, there's no such thing as an optional, right? Like if it's optional, we're doing it because our idea is we want to take up the most amount of real estate that we can on that application. And so if it's an optional that applies to you, we're going to fill it out. If there's an optional interview, we're going to take it. Now, there's a couple of caveats to that. Number one is accommodations, right? If you have a
Mm-hmm.
disability or you have a health impairment that maybe you've taken the LSAT with accommodations, maybe you're planning to use accommodations in law school, unless it significantly impacted your GPA and you need to use that as a part of your GPA addendum, I really recommend not disclosing that because there are still biases out there. There are still people with biases on admissions committees. And so I really like to withhold that information until you've paid your seat deposit. But beyond that, I say, talk about it. The other question that I never answer or advise people to answer is what other schools are you applying to?
Mm.
They don't even, you have those parts close to your vest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, how do you go about things like scholarship negotiation? I might be jumping the gun, but kind of this idea of sharing information.
Yeah.
We don't generally advise as well. You don't need to tell them where you're going, where else you're applying, how many schools you're applying to. So if I'm trying to leverage perhaps a better offer from another school, similarly ranked, for example, I have an offer from Wash U and I'm trying to get into Vanderbilt, but I want a little bit more money out of Vanderbilt. How do you go about that kind of leverage opportunity? Because a lot of schools don't invite that open
Of course
negotiation.
we don't. Okay, Josh, this is my favorite thing to talk about because
Okay.
it was one of the most like jaw-dropping moments that I had in my time working for law schools. And I've worked with many law schools. I do consulting with law schools still on their
Hmm.
admissions and recruiting processes, how we handle wait lists, how we admit and recruit LLM. Like I work with law schools nationwide on this. So my ears to the ground, and this is not unique to the law schools that I've been directly affiliated with. My dad's a plumber. I'm a first gen student. Like, this is not my world. And
Hmm.
so here I am, fresh face, like newly director of admissions at the law school. And a kid bebops in to my door who we've recruited. And he's like, hey, Autumn, good to see you. I've got this offer from SMU, which is a private law school in Dallas, very spendy.
Hmm.
This is my scholarship offer from SMU. What can you do? And I was just like, what the heck? So I took the letter. I was like, give me just a minute. Walked around the corner to my dean. And I was like, can you believe this joker? Like, look what he just asked us to do. He should be so lucky. Like, I'm like having a little bit of a moment. We're
Sure.
convincing. And he was like, he's kicked back in his chair and he goes, yeah, double his scholarship. And I almost fell over. I was like, wait a minute. Like, are you saying that like when we committed to law school, we could have, you don't even know what you
Hmm.
don't know. But law schools are going to give you their lowest offer. It's like buying a used car.
Sure.
The mistake that I see most of my clients wanting to make is they'll get their first offer from the law school, and either they're like, "Eek, I got in! I'm gonna pay my seat deposit. I'm so happy."
Hmm.
And I have to say, I'm a Texas girl. Hold your horses, right? It's too early for that. We're not ready. Um, but then so they're either like ready to go, ready to sign, they don't even know they can negotiate, or they're the other end of the spectrum and they're like, okay, how do I start negotiating? And it's October. Josh, we know this is too early, right? Like
Okay.
you have,
Okay.
well, you have no leverage.
Sure.
Second of all, especially in a cycle like this or like last cycle, you have to wait until you have some more kind of little tools in your arsenal.
So those tools being other offers.
Other offers,
Okay.
um, and also you have to be ready to put something on the line. So my favorite scholarship negotiation tactic is here is my offer at competing university that is similarly ranked.
Yep.
I want to go to your university because, right, a
Hmm.
really compelling response. I am willing to withdraw my other applications and commit on the spot if you can get to this specific amount. And it's hard to say no.
Sure.
As
Sure.
dean of admissions, I'm like, heck yes, let's lock this down. I'm looking at my metrics in US News and ABA reporting, and I'm like,
Hmm.
this is a sure thing. Being willing to withdraw your other applications is really where you put your money on the line, right? Then the law school knows they're not playing how high is up with you. That's the end of the negotiations. And typically, my clients aren't ready to say that until April or May.
Right. After they have all their offers. Uh,
Exactly.
and that speaks, I think, a lot too, because there's a there's a lot of sense to that, and I want to talk a little bit about my experience as well, and then there's also a part of me that like makes my stomach twist a little bit, because we really discourage things like binding early decision binding, or binding early decision programs, right? Where if I apply and I am accepted, then I have, I am fully committed to that school. I have to withdraw everything else. But the difference is those don't typically let you see those other offers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, I am making an informed decision about the market that is around me and the options that I have, as opposed to just saying, yeah, I won't wait for any other application. And so that makes a lot more sense to me, because it is a tool of negotiation after you have made decisions about cost, the final cost, not just scholarship amount, because that plays a big role, and those other
Living
things.
in
So,
Malibu is very different than living in Dallas.
right, exactly. And a $10,000 tuition to BYU, where I go to school, for example, is a whole lot different than $10,000 to Columbia. It's
Bingo.
50% off versus, uh, you know,
Clink.
yeah, 10% approximately. So,
Exactly.
very, very different. Um, with my experience, one thing that it was similarly when I was talking to schools, it was that kind of indication that I have options, but I would be more interested here with the right amount of money, right? BYU is a little bit lower ranked than some of the other schools that I was looking at.
Mm-hmm.
They're in the mid 20s, but when I was talking to them, there was like spoke very openly, the dean did at least, about my other options that I had available to me given my LSAT score. And we talked very openly about that, and I basically said like the biggest consideration for me would be I would like to go to school for as cheap as possible, and if BYU can make that happen, then I'm much more interested in BYU as an option.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think mirrors that same discussion, and it's an opportunity. I'm not really sharing a lot of information about where I'm going, how much money I have, other offers. It's just like, hey, if you want to be in the race, I'm gonna need a little more money. Then
That's right.
yeah,
And it's transparency on your end, right? We
sure.
ask a lot of transparency from law schools. We don't know how much they can offer us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're kind of playing this guessing game. And so your approach, our approach is very similar. Like, here are my cards, they're on the table. Like, are we dancing or not?
Yeah, yeah. I'm curious. You mentioned your spreadsheet with your metrics. Uh, I want to ask: is this like your index formulas where you're just tracking GPA, LSAT? Where does this put us in rankings, or on our previous meetings?
1000%. Yeah.
Yes, great.
It's
Okay.
my daily dashboard, even on the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
starting in like, December 15th, daily email. And it's coming to my inbox. And so, in concert in my inbox, as director of admissions, with all of these like people asking for more money, is this reminder of where I'm sitting. Okay, I can admit 3 more students below median LSAT and still maintain probably our US News ranking, unless our reputation slips because our state did something really backwards. I
Sure,
mean, there's all
sure.
these things that
Right.
US News
Something
thinks
else happens. Yeah.
the
Of
part
course.
that I can control. It's
Right.
this SAT GPA, which takes us into this whole splitter conversation.
Okay. Yes. Before we do splitter conversation, I do
Sorry,
want to
I'm jumping.
ask.
I'm
That's
excited.
right. I want to come next because I love that conversation. Because we do our best to help people with GPAs, but we also sometimes get to people too late. They come to us after their GPA, maybe they're 5 years, 10 years out of school, their GPA is already where it's at. So before we get to there, you have schools, and the message that they give is that applications are holistic. I'd love to hear how I know what and I think a lot of my colleagues' stances are on that, but I want to know what your response is besides just the little chuckle
Oh,
to
giggle.
holistic evaluations of applications.
hmm Well, they're holistic, but they're also realistic,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I work with a lot of, starry-eyed academic wannabes, right? Who
Sure.
who had a lot of fun the first 2 years of school and then decided maybe law school was on their horizon and have been playing a lot of catch up.
Okay.
And they're like, this is my target school, this is my reach, and this is my safety. And I'm like, define those things for me. And like, well, they have a holistic review, but you also have to give them something to work with. right?
Sure.
I mean, if I'm given an opportunity to look at 3 to 5 students who have very similar stats, and one of them has a really compelling story. One of them has made time to come in and meet with us. They've been at every virtual event we've had. They've met our recruiters on the road. I'm going to admit that student because I have a relationship with them. That's holistic review. It doesn't mean that your charm and winning essay can overcome a multitude of GPA and LSAT issues.
Yes. We use the phrase holistic after you have the numbers to get in the door.
That's
That's
exactly right.
right. You gotta at least get invited first, and
Mhm.
then they'll start looking at, are you actually somebody that they want around at their law school?
That's right. Oh, absolutely.
I'd love to hear more about the splitter discussion then, and how
Yeah,
you approach a splitter who oftentimes it's high LSAT, low GPA. I mean, that's the one we see, I think, most frequently.
that's right. And this happens a lot to non-traditional students. They have what we
Hmm.
call a stale GPA, right? They've been out of school 7 or 8 years. They have since figured out they have an ADHD diagnosis. They have since their frontal lobe has fully engaged, and now they're
Sure.
super academic. Their master's work is beautiful, but we know that doesn't help in
Nope.
admissions and scholarship. I mean, your adcoms are going to see it, but it does in fact, they don't report it to US News, they don't report it to the ABA. So at the end
Yes.
of the day, it
You're not
doesn't
putting it in your formulas.
exactly. And so, my advice to a splitter is like actually make yourself a splitter. Because sometimes I have people we do a free strategy call, free 20-minute, let's just kind of decide where you are and if we want to work together or not.
Hmm.
And people will say, well, I'm a splitter. I have a 2.3 and a 151. And I'm like, what's you splitting, honey? What's you splitting? There's no split. You're the same,
Yeah,
right?
that's below 25th at most schools.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. On the academic side of it, we call these disparate students.
Okay.
And when you're playing this index game on the school side, it can be really advantageous and really cost effective to admit this splitter. It's almost like a matching game, right?
Hmm.
So I can admit this student who has a really low GPA and a really great LSAT, and then I'll find his inverse at another school. And basically I'm admitting like a bucket one student at that point,
Right.
and for maybe half the price of my scholarship. So more savvy law schools understand the beauty of a disparate student, especially one who's done their work and maybe has some good LOR to talk about their academic performance or their work ethic and how that has changed since. A really strong GPA addendum that talks about it doesn't make excuses, it doesn't justify, it admits exactly what happened and that you have a solution and that law school is going to be different. That's a GPA addendum that I can run with.
Okay. I am curious. I want to talk a little bit about GPA addendums. Our typical recommendation is all you need to do is just draw attention to important facts, which, for example, year 2 and 3, or year 3 and 4, junior, senior year, I had a 4.0. That's it. That's generally our recommendation,
Mm.
because we see, rather, if you admit to the problem to begin with, then you kind of, I think students tend to drift into excuse land,
Oh,
where
100%.
that's, I had mental health struggles, and so, or a specific event happened, and it's like, that event, and it's an event that could absolutely happen again in law school, right? Oh,
Mhm.
I lost my job, I broke up with my girlfriend, and that just tanked my year. How do you balance the risk that students see, or that schools are seeing, either the excuse or the potential of a student who has the same sort of collapse in law school, with the idea of, you want to help try and rehabilitate that GPA?
Yeah, it's got to be the Oreo cookie, right? So you've
Okay.
got like, I'm a really great student. The highlight things from your GPA. Oh, I had this one semester where things were really rough, or it took me a couple years to figure out how to be a grown up, but now I
Hmm.
am a grown up, and the end of my trajectory shows that. And this is my plan for law school, right? Like that's sort of how we approach it. We don't want to hide the ball.
Sure.
I think that would be the only problem with being like, "Hey, look how great I am," but then look at your transcript and I'm like, tell me this story because these aren't matching up.
Hmm.
So I do think you have to be honest. And, in the rooms where I've sat, like literal rooms around a table discussing the applicants, and these are typically the folks who are in the middle, right? They're not a presumptive admit, they're not a presumptive deny. These are the folks in the middle. And we have literal conversations about them. Like, let's look, and we'll, on the big screen, we'll pull up their transcript and we'll look semester by semester, like, is this a risk? Do they have any LORs that talk about the fact that we saw a lot of, growth
Sure.
or different, what does their resume look like? Have they
Hmm.
held a job for 16 years and they've been out of school for 20? Like, that's a very different
Very
story
different.
with
Yes.
growth.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. So you're saying, so in what I'm hearing, and the part that I think that we probably see eye to eye on is you need an application that completely demonstrates this rehabilitation, not just a claim that you have done so.
Yep. I
The
need proof.
letter of recommendation, personal statements,
Mhm.
etc.
That's
I'd
right.
love to pivot to personal statements. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that you see students make in personal statements?
They regurgitate their resume in a worse
Okay.
version, right? Their resume does
Yeah.
a great job of outlining your work experience, your volunteer experience, your honors, your
Hmm.
awards, your certifications, and then people just take that and they use it as like the outline for their personal statement, and they tell the worst version of their resume. And like,
Yeah.
not helpful. I I like sort of like draw the metaphor of it's like you have 40 acres of land, but you're
Hmm.
building a skyscraper.
Okay.
Like you're not using the real estate of your application properly.
Sure.
The best personal statements kind of dig in and talk about one specific moment
Hmm.
from the resume, right? The other thing that I see with personal statements is they don't make the applicant the main character.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
It's all
Yep.
about an injustice that you saw. And so you focus on this like really far-flung political idea, or you like quote your favorite theologian, and you start with a quote. There was somebody in like 2014 who must have put out some kind of form of how to write a personal statement. And it started with a quote. It was usually by Abraham Lincoln, and then it kind of evolved into how that quote applied to your life. And like if I were a person who drank, it would have been a drinking game during admissions because Abraham Lincoln was it was like he was applying to law school, so you've got to be the main character.
Interesting. I'm 100% on board with you on that one. I didn't realize how many people put quotes. I think we yell about it a lot. So our background, we do, and for those who listen to the Thinking LSAT, you're aware we do the personal statement gong show. We review personal statements and we yell about them a lot.
Oh, good.
We're recording this show on September 3rd, so on I think this episode will be coming out on this upcoming Monday. Is going to be a just extensive review of multiple personal statements.
Mhm.
And that's one of the biggest points is that so many students could even cut like the first half of their personal statement
Mhm.
because it's just
Mhm. Yes.
background, right? I know more about the pro bono clinic that they interned at than I know about them by the end of their personal statement. And that's a problem.
It is a problem. It is. And I think it's just hard sometimes for high achievers to write about themselves,
Sure.
right? They're nose blind to how special they are. That for them, a random Tuesday is actually like a really meaningful thing for us to know about.
Mm,
They don't realize how special they are.
sure. That makes a lot of sense. Uh, what do you think are students' awareness, or at least when they come to you, fresh, I want to do law school, what is their typical awareness of the scholarship game of law school?
Most of them have no idea that they will even be eligible for a scholarship. They're like, well, I'll apply for scholarships after I apply to law school. I'm like, honey, your app to law school is your scholarship application,
Hmm.
right? Like, this is it. There's not, thankfully, right? There's not a bunch of outside
Right, right.
basic things, but it does put a lot of pressure on your application itself, knowing that it doesn't just have one purpose, it has two. You want to get across that admissions hurdle, obviously,
Hmm.
but you are also trying to create as many tethers in that application that can tie to specific named scholarship dollars, right? Obviously, schools have waivers, there's funny money, they can discount, like we know that.
Sure.
But when you can write an application that ticks some of the markers that we know are ways that named donors gives giant named scholarships, and I as a an admissions leader can be like, oh my gosh, this kid wrote about rowing crew, here is a donor who I know all of his kids did regatta, I can sit this applicant by this donor at our donor dinner in October, and they're going to get along like a house on fire. My donors are going to be happy, my alumni base is happy, my student is happy, he gets 20K extra a year on top of whatever else they've given him, right? That is the real work of your application. And
Hmm.
most people are just trying to get admitted.
Yeah, yes. And that's we so many students and law schools are really good, deans are really good at making students feel special for being admitted.
These aren't
Like
the droids you're looking for. I'm like,
what?
I'm looking for droids.
Right. Well, welcome. Like congratulations. What an honor and a privilege. Like
Yes, they're
and it's like
politicians.
yes, yeah, and that should not be what you're honored by. It
Hmm.
You should be
Hmm.
going for good money. How do you help
Yes.
students make selections when choosing what schools to apply to?
Yeah. Ugh. This is the work of the strategic school list, right? And
Yes.
this is a space where AI can be really helpful.
Mm,
Really putting in your metrics, making sure you tell your AI, like your prompts matter a lot, make sure they're
sure.
getting their data from actual like ABA the 509 reports are a great source. And so making sure that you've trained your AI to do their research well. Um, but when we're making school lists in a cycle like this, we're saying add 5 to 7 to your list. Like no matter how many schools you were planning to apply to, you need to add 5 to 7. The drumbeat around. Have you seen the September and October numbers?
For the LSAT?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
Biscuits and gravy. It's going
Yeah.
to be a wild cycle.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing from my friends who are still in the school side of things is that leadership is telling them, hold your horses. Do not make admissions decisions until we know what the pool looks like.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to be a very late cycle. I think decisions are going to roll out later than ever. And I think the scholarship situation is going to be really intense. The other thing, though, is that when you're making your school list, you've got to really be honest with yourself. I think there are a lot of people who enter these strategic school lists, and they are delusional
Hmm.
about where their safety schools are. They haven't looked at in-state, out-of-state requirements. They haven't looked at not what the medians were 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, last cycle. That's
Right.
what you would be paying attention to. And if you are not above both of the medians, GPA and LSAT for last cycle, that is a reach school for you. The
Mm.
end.
I agree. I think that's spot on. And I think you're probably right that students are a little self overconfident in their application and like in who they are, even despite bad numbers, right?
That's
And numbers that aren't sufficient. And it's hard because and so I have a couple broader questions, but I think this is a perfect time. So I actually want to pivot to the article that you wrote for the National Jurist
yeah.
about applications, and I'm going to be really upfront here. We're going to disagree on this point because our advice is actually very different than yours here. So
Okay.
your advice is that students can apply without their LSAT score and getting in. Um,
Well, they won't
our
get in without an LSAT
no,
score.
no, they won't get in, but they should get their application in
Yep.
without the LSAT score to get in early and then be wait for consideration until they have the LSAT score that they want.
Hmm.
Let me offer the pushback that I know myself and a lot of my colleagues here at the Demon feel. Um, Given that those medians are going up, and an example they just shared at my law school. So the medians that are published for my law school, I think is a like 167 LSAT score and 393 GPA. Are
Hmm.
the medians for my 1L class? It's a 170 and like a 396.
Oh yeah.
So median, my class is higher than any other class they've ever had. Some of the alumni, and I mean, I'm sure this is just like playing nice as well, but some of the alumni made the joke to the dean of admissions. They came for a welcome lunch, and they told the dean of admissions like I would not have gotten in 3 years ago.
100%.
Or 3 years ago, like if I applied today, I would not be getting in with what I applied with 3 years ago. And so
Hmm.
when there are more applicants, I mean, the real lesson is you just need to have a better application, which includes better LSAT number, right?
Hmm.
My concern is that what we say is that you should just wait until you get the LSAT score that you know is going to deliver. And if that means you wait a cycle, then you wait a cycle and you
Hmm.
focus on the LSAT so that you have the opportunity to apply with the best LSAT score possible. Otherwise, you apply with a partial application and then maybe you take the LSAT before you're ready. Maybe you don't get the score and you feel this pressure to apply. I'd love to
Hmm.
hear your thoughts a little bit.
I'm team way to cycle every single
Okay,
time.
great,
Right.
great.
I'm team
Okay.
way to cycle every single time. When I'm telling people to apply as on September 1, right? Like
Yep.
my
Yeah, agree with
clients
that. Yes.
who have worked with me, like the reason they started working with me early is that on September 1, they hit submit.
Yep.
Um, the reason that I say that is because if you are going to apply this cycle, you know you're going to apply this cycle, the earlier you get that application in, the better your chances are. And there are
Okay.
many
Yep.
reasons for that. Number one is the school side of LSAC is called Unite. Before that, it was called Access
Okay.
and ACES. Sorry, ACES.
Okay.
And ACES and Unite algorithmically in the background of law schools, it favors chronology. It
Mm.
just does. I have seen this happen. I have moved applications before our committee for review, and it always flips them based on when that application was submitted. Even if I tell it, weight it by LSAT, weight it by GPA, like you have to like stand on one foot and hold your tongue just right. Because if you think the student facing side of LSAC is awful, you should see the school side of it. Sorry, LSAC, I'm just speaking the truth. Like, figure it out, hire someone to make it better. But it favors chronology. And so, just by virtue of being at the top of the stack, you're going to be better off.
Mm.
Second of all, you do not lose your agency over whether or not your application is reviewed just because you've hit submit. So by default, most schools, if they see a subsequent LSAT that you are scheduled for, they're going to hold your app from review just by design. Like
Hmm.
that's just what they're going to do. At some bigger schools that have really high app volume, they may give you send an email and say, "Hey, just so you know, we're only going to look at your application once. When
Hmm.
do you want us to look at it? When November post? When October post? You tell us, and that's when we're going to review it." You can always email an admissions office and say, "Hey, I'm going to be taking the LSAT twice. Please hold my app from review until the November scores post." And then if you see your November score and you don't like it, you can say, "Hey, JK, could you please hold my app from review until March?" But what I, as an admissions person, love is that I've already read your application, right? And if I really connect with it and I can see where you are in the tapestry of my class, I'm going to dog ear that app and I'm going to come back to it. I've kind of soft held a spot for you in my 1L class because you have a compelling story, because you fit in with our mission, because you're going to be able to write on a law journal that I'm really excited about. It's that human element of things that matters, that if I don't see your application until March, I've already fallen in love with 400 people other than you.
Hmm. So in terms of that review, you say, you've read the application. How does that vary or differ? Because you're using the word review, but I guess I'm unclear as to, isn't that reading early a review? Does that make sense? Like, what's the difference between you reading it in October without my LSAT versus reading it in November after you officially have been told to wait to review it?
Yeah. So it's kind of a preview, right?
Okay.
Like depending on, and every school's different, right? Like some schools do have very human readers. Some schools are using more,
Hmm.
formulaic things and it's just based on stats. And at that point, chronology is going to favor you anyway because of the way that the application comes in.
Okay.
I Here's the other thing. I'm going to preview, it's more of a preview. I'm going to preview your application when it comes across my desk, especially if you've made a campus visit. You're coming in to visit, you're going to sit in on class, we're going to give you a tour, maybe you're going to have lunch with some current students. I've looked through your application to see where you fit in. How can I start recruiting you? How can we start building this story out? And when you've made those kind of inroads, I really don't advise students to visit a campus until their application is in the door because
Mm.
it's, as an admissions person, it's hard for me to really shoot straight with you about what your opportunities are, about what you need to do to improve your chance of getting admitted if I'm just blind, right? Like you just make an appointment and come in, I don't know your GPA, I don't know what your interests are, I don't know what your LSAT's looking like. So I just think there's a lot of factors, and maybe this is just me selfishly, like what I wish people would do.
Sure.
I just think especially in a cycle like this, if you wait and see your November LSAT score, and then you hit submit. Well, the law school's on a break for a month, right?
Hmm.
Even though staff is still working, we are really mailing in at that point, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
we're under an avalanche of other applications. And it really just, at that point, you might as well just wait and apply next cycle. So I think we're on the same team in that
Right.
element.
We're on the same team on that point. The the one other consideration that I'd offer, I think that there develops a level of pressure when
Mhm.
you have sent your application in September, if
Yeah.
you don't have the LSAT, because now it feels like it's in and I have to get it.
Hmm.
Whether that, I don't think that's justified necessarily, but I think people have that sense. Whereas if you are, okay, I'll apply once I have my LSAT. Now, again, though, if someone, I tell all my students, if you're taking the November LSAT, you're applying for 2027.
Thank you. Say
You're
that.
not applying for 2026, right?
Hmm.
Because, and that's, I use the exact same story. You're getting your LSAT score back the week before Thanksgiving. And then there's finals, and then there's Christmas break, and now they're getting to your application on January 15th,
Hmm.
right? And so the November test is,
It's a January result.
it's a January result. Yes. I'd love to hear your input. There's a study published, and I'll make sure to link it in the show notes for the listeners. It's also in the Thinking LSAT a couple of weeks ago. It was a study published in the University of Chicago Law and Economics Journal that talked about the cost of applying later to law school.
Hmm.
And they found that a 100-day delay resulted in an 8% decrease in your admissions chances, which was the equivalent of like 2 and a change LSAT points, or 3 and a change LSAT points, and then like 0.35 to your undergraduate GPA.
Hmm.
Is that something that you would say is consistent with your experience at
Absolutely.
law school? Okay. Tell me a
Yep.
little bit about why that would be. I think we've talked around it a lot, but I'd love to hear specifically, like in the context of that study, why is it so, even November, set them up for so much trouble in terms of the value that their LSAT and GPA play?
Because the class is sort of already set. You're not as advantageous to the law school when you come in later like that. Like a lot of times you're in some cases a liability, right? Like
Mm,
I'm having to offset you with someone else. And you also are showing the law school that you don't have your stuff together, right? Like when a student has applied in September, I know that they are thoughtful, that they have been introspective, that they have done their work on time. And a risky applicant in September is much less risky than a risky applicant in March or April, right?
yep.
I don't know if we want to go here, but this is the national merit situation. Are you aware of this?
I think it sounds familiar, but I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
tell me. I'm gonna say totally, but this is your. I'll let you tell everyone.
I love a national merit candidate. I love a national merit student. I think they're brilliant. But a
Okay.
lot of times they hit 1L year and it is spiral, right? Because
Okay.
they haven't, they're burnout.
Mm,
They're just done, right? They have like been plugging away since their junior year of high school. They haven't had a minute. They've never had any kind of academic, you know, struggle, right?
sure.
And that
Sure.
1L year, as you're experiencing, Josh, is the great equalizer, right? It
Yes.
is
Yes, it
the
is.
equalizer. And it's really rough. And I think a lot of times those national merit kids are the ones that are applying in March and April.
Mhm.
And you're just sort of like, you're just hoping to get by on the skin of your teeth. And that is not going to work in law school. It
No.
does not work. Cramming is not law school
No.
success.
No. It is not.
And then when you
It is
apply
not.
late, that is sort of what you're showing us is that
Hmm.
it's a Hail Mary.
Yeah. No. That's so. It's both the fact that you already have numbers in your spreadsheet
Mhm.
and the fact that just what it signifies when you are somebody who is applying later.
That's
Uh,
right.
when it talks about, and you've made reference to this a little bit as well, the wave kind of system where you get a pool and then you're evaluating them in waves.
Mhm.
Uh, when have you had, like, what's the earliest wave that you started like, applying, making offers, seeing students, and like really truly reviewing and evaluating them?
Mhm.
And how early can that be sometimes?
I think it's typically like mid to late October is
Okay.
kind of that wave. Um,
So the
and it,
October LSAT can miss that.
mhm,
If you take the October LSAT, even if all your materials are prepped for day one, you submit as soon as the October LSAT score comes out, you could miss that first wave.
that's right. That's right. And the other thing that I know from working on the other side of things
Mm-hmm.
for schools is that October is travel month. Like every
Mm,
LSAC, most of the LSAC fairs are during October.
yeah.
Every Swapla, Mopla, everything we're going to all over the US trying to recruit our
Yep.
students. And we're exhausted. We're living out of a suitcase. We're excited because we're seeing our recruiting friends, but October is nuts. It's so busy. Every pre-law club in America is asking you to come speak. And so you just when you can get a batch admitted, landed, locked in, and you feel like, okay, I've started my class. Like you can kind of
Mhm.
breathe a little bit because you've got that first little foundation of your class set.
Love that. Um, okay, so the last kind of broad question, I've got two broad questions to finish off. The first one, I just don't know what questions to ask. So, is there anything else behind the scenes that I have missed? I feel like
Mm.
we've gotten a lot of them, but are there anything else that you're like from the other side, you see schools do this and students either presume otherwise or would benefit from knowing that schools do it that way?
Oh, I see. It's like you want like the inside scoop from the
The
school.
insides, yeah. I mean, already the chronology with like the sorting of applicants, that's an inside scoop that students, I think it is consistent with what we say and it's consistent with the results that we see.
Hmm.
But we don't know all the whys. I've never worked in an admissions department, so
Right.
I don't know exactly. So is there any other inside scoop that I'm just not knowing to ask about that I should be asking?
Yeah. If you're willing to be super risky, um, there is almost always a little bit of melt at orientation. Almost always. And so there's a chance that if you were willing to tell an admissions officer, hey, if somebody doesn't show up to orientation, peel their sticker name off that folder and put mine on it, write it in Sharpie. I don't care. I will be sitting in the parking lot. You give me a call. I have seen this work.
Does it get them money though?
Oh, of course not. No.
Okay. Yeah.
No. So you're not
Okay.
going to get any money. But if you
Okay.
invest in school, it has worked in the past.
Okay.
The other thing is handwriting. handwriting thank you letters. When I'm on my
Mm.
little like listserv, it's 1987, Facebook groups of admissions folks, they still get really charmed by a handwritten thank you note. It's really warm. Like I had to walk a client this cycle through how to even address a letter. I'm not kidding you. My husband was like, that cannot be true. I'm like, no, he didn't even know where to put the return address, right? It is a lost art. If you meet a dean, if you visit an on-campus event, even if you're not admitted yet, following up, it takes a lot of work. Like I know it's a lot of work to apply to law school. It's a lot of work to deal with all of you high maintenance people. To love you,
Sure.
but you're high maintenance. A handwritten thank you note goes a long way.
Great. Last question I have. Do you see any what are the biggest misconceptions about law school applications that you see students or applicants bring to the table when they start their application journey?
You're gonna love this one because I'm sure
Okay.
it's a headwind that you all face.
Okay.
I'm just not a very good test taker.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hear that.
You know what there is in law school, famously? Like a lot of tests. And at the end, there's also famously this really giant one. If you think that you saying you're not a good test taker is going to make an admissions committee be like, oh, well, they have a 3.8. They're just not a good standardized test taker. No, that is red flag risky,
hmm
risky. If you are not a good test taker, you need to figure out why and you need to get a solution before you go to law school. Just saying that is one of the biggest red flags.
People say that to you?
Oh, people write that in their like
Oh
LSAT.
my gosh.
Yes. Oh my gosh, all the time.
Oh,
You should look
I
it up.
shouldn't be shocked. I guess I just like it just I probably cannot even begin to fathom some of the stories that you have
Oh,
about
I will write a book
applicants.
someday. I will write a book
I
someday.
would buy this book. I really
Yes.
would.
Yeah,
Uh
you yes, I have so many stories. We should have another podcast and I'll like tell you all the fun
Okay,
stories.
okay. I'm excited to hear the horror stories. I think at the end, though, the big summary that both you and everyone here at the Demon would share is that if you're going to apply to law school, you need to be a serious candidate. You need to be a
Yes.
professional. You need to bring the numbers that back up that you are going to succeed in law school. Your application materials need to focus on the reasons you are successful and will be successful, not on anything else. That is the focus. Why are you going to be a great law student and a great lawyer? And you need to show it. And that I think is the core part of admissions. And I would imagine that you'd probably agree with that.
Oh, 100%. Your application has to convey not just why law school, but it also has to convey why me, and not
Mm.
in a pick me kind of way.
Yes.
But
Yes.
why do you need me in the tapestry of your 1L class in this beautiful Socratic way? We're going to be learning the law. What unique voice do you bring to my class? And why should I let you in? And how much money would you like?
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Autumn, thank you so much for your time. This was a delight. It was so much fun to kind of talk about and talk through this admission cycle. I know we've got a lot of students who are ramping up for it. So if you
Yes.
want to ask any questions about admissions, feel free to email in at daily@lsatdemon.com. And a big thanks again to Autumn Lockett over at GradMissions for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Thanks for listening, everybody.